Penguin Random House Audio presents Woman Number 17 by Edan Lepucki. Read for you by Cassandra Campbell and Phoebe Strole. Lady 1. It was summer. The heat had arrived harsh and bright, bleaching the sidewalks and choking the flowers before they had a chance to wilt. The freeways shimmered. Any hotter and they might crack, might explode, and the poor cars would confetti into the air. People were complaining. They were moving slowly. They were swarming the beaches like tiny bugs upon the backs of dead animals. I preferred to stay home. Ice cubes in the dog bowl, Riesling in the freezer. The air conditioner was broken. I had taken to sitting in the living room with the curtains drawn, my body edged with sweat like frosting on a cake, daring to see how hot it could get. I ate salad for dinner every night and had almost checked myself and the boys into a hotel. I'd refrained because of the babysitter search. What would applicants think if I requested they meet me poolside at the Roosevelt? Instead, I waited. It didn't take long for the job hunters to come calling. The doorbell rang 8 minutes ahead of schedule, and I jumped. This was the first interview. I'd been fluffing and refluffing the couch pillows, adjusting my ponytail. When I opened the front door, a gust of gritty air came rushing at me, and I felt its particulates dirtying my lungs. A young woman stood on the welcome mat, smiling so wide I could see where her gums webbed into her mouth. I'd expected her to be pretty. Almost all young women in LA are, especially those raised here, the beauties in the tap water. But she was plain-looking, her wide hazel eyes too far apart, her dark blonde hair thin and flat. "Esther?" I finally said. I knew she didn't go by her full name, but S felt so pretentious, as if she'd rebranded herself at sleepaway camp. "Please," she said, "call me S." I admired her assertiveness. "S it is, then. Come in." She was wearing a cheap floral print dress and leather sandals. The dress was loose where it should have been fitted, and it accentuated her wide hips. As my mother might have said, the poor girl doesn't know how to dress her own body. Know thy size and shape. Being female is a lifelong lesson that starts with how to wipe, front to back, and ends only with death, graceless always. Clearly, this young woman hadn't been properly instructed. With another gummy smile, she stepped into the house. There was no hesitation. "Sorry it's so stuffy in here," I said. "The air conditioning isn't working. Something's wrong with the ventilation system. It needs to be completely rehabbed. I keep hoping the heat will break, but it just gets hotter and hotter. I'm sure there's a wildfire or two in our future. Maybe the whole city will just burst into flames. That might be kind of fun, actually." I realized I was babbling and shut my mouth. S still hadn't said anything. She was too busy taking in the high-beamed ceiling of the living room and the framed prints on the wall, the antique circus poster, the black-and-white photograph of a Pizza Hut that my sister-in-law Kit had taken and given to me and Carl as a wedding gift. I wondered if she'd ask for it back. S walked closer to the photo, and I recalled that she had graduated with a minor in art. In an email she'd written that she loved the Pre-Raphaelites. "Was there traffic coming up the hill?" I said. "Not too bad," she replied, not looking away from the photo. And then, "This is rad." When she finally turned back to me with her big pretty eyes, I said, "Thank you," as if I'd taken it. S looked so young standing there. She was young. She couldn't have been older than 22. I remembered myself at that age, my pure, unlined face, my brain-dead roommates and our giant glass ashtray. My potential. That feeling that I could apply to graduate school whenever I was ready and all would be solved. I'd been beautiful. The past tense was like a shove to the chest. "Did you study photography in any of your classes?" I asked. "Nah, mostly your standard paintings by dead guys." In the photograph, a man leaned sullenly against the glass doors of the Pizza Hut. Big clouds ballooned across the sky. S finally turned from the picture. Beyond the ghost of gloss on her lips, she wasn't wearing any makeup. She hadn't even put on mascara for this interview. "My mom calls it pizza slut," she said, and laughed. I laughed too, mostly out of confusion. S didn't seem nervous enough, or at all. Maybe she didn't really want the job. "Shall we go into the kitchen to talk?" I asked. "We can discuss your qualifications." She nodded and smiled again. "Sure thing." "Devon's asleep," I said as I led her through the dining room, "in case you're wondering." "I was, actually." She widened her eyes, goofy. "What if you'd lied about having a kid? What if you were really a murderer? Wasn't there a Craigslist killer?" This time I laughed for real. Who was this girl? "Don't worry," I said. "Killers don't post for nannies. They want personal assistance, and they would definitely ask to see a photo first." S looked down at herself. "So much for that," she said. I laughed again. She was so easy with me, as if we'd met dozens of times before. Of course, I'd never heard of her until she answered my ad. Live-in nanny wanted for bright and adorable toddler, Hollywood Hills adjacent, with a sweet email that advised me to please peruse the attached curriculum vitae. Her mother must have ghostwritten that. "Dev should wake in about 15 minutes, I said. I'd planned it this way. I had to make sure S wasn't a weirdo before introducing her to my child. But I knew she'd be normal. She was a recent Berkeley grad, for God's sake, and had been raised right down the hill. She may have dabbled in the pre-Raphaelites, but her senior honors thesis was on early childhood education. We walked into the kitchen, which Carl and I had redone. The sink was wide as a pig's trough, and the chrome fridge hummed. Milkshake, our old Maltese, lay in the corner, panting. "He didn't come running when the bell rang?" S asked, bending down to pet him. "He's so old he's forgotten how to be a dog," I said. "Would you like some water? Or maybe some iced tea?" I expected her to say no, but she took me up on the iced tea. I watched as she drank it down in one long gulp. "The AC in the Camry's busted," she said when the glass was empty, as if we were sharing the car. She wiped her mouth with the back of her arm. Carl, who had moved out just a few weeks before, would have said that S lacked self-awareness. But that wasn't it. It wasn't a deficit. S was comfortable with herself, with her average looks, her unflattering clothing, her interest in art. Take it or leave it, she seemed to say. I only wished I had that kind of confidence. The bravado of someone younger, 20 years younger, cuts deep. And yet, I didn't resent S. In fact, I liked her. "You said you're living with your mother?" I asked. "Staying, not living," she replied. "On the couch." All this time I'd been imagining her mother in a condo in Westwood. She'd keep the treadmill in the guest room, next to a bed outfitted with brocade shams, and in the corner a big bag of wrapping paper supplies. But apparently there was no guest room. S held up her glass and gestured with her chin to the sink. She wanted to wash it, I realized. "Go for it," I said. "I'm looking to get my own place as soon as possible," she said, turning on the water. "It's why this position is ideal. I also love the age Devon is. 2, 3 years old is when a kid's imagination really soars. If you take language development into consideration, you're—" "What did you say your thesis was on again?" I passed her a towel, and we sat at the kitchen's center island. Her resume, her curriculum vitae, was printed out on the counter. "Thesis is too strong a word," she said. "It was my senior project. I wrote about the benefits of play for children aged 18 months to 4, how they use it to make sense of the world and themselves, to test limits and face their fears. It's incredible, really." I nodded. This was the poised, studious S. Have you ever given Devin a big...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?